Hello and welcome. In today's video, we are exploring how Kotlin Multiplatform or KMP mirrors the traditional Android app development process. Join me, Per-Erik, as we build a simple one-screen BMI calculator. If you find this guide useful, please hit the like and subscribe button. Let's go. First, let's break down the UI to define our UI state and UI events. Our domain object is the bottom measurements, which we will add to our UI state. Additionally, there is an overlay for displaying the BMI value. Let's represent this with BMI display string. For the visual elements like the selected height and weight, which are purely presentational, we'll add height display and weight display in our UI state. Finally, the top part of the UI will change color according to the BMI value. So we'll add an accent color to our UI state to manage this dynamic styling. For the user interactions, we only have two. We can change the height and change the weight. Let's add those actions to our sealed class as well. Let's set up the project. We go to kmp.jetbrains.com to their wizard and change the project name, project ID, and make sure Android, iOS, and desktop is checked. Download the project, open it in Fleet or Android Studio if you prefer. Once the IDE has launched and activated Smart Mode, we will be ready to get started. We will integrate MOKO ViewModel, so let's start by adding the necessary dependencies. First, we update the libs with the version and the library details. Next, navigate to your build Gradle file in the Compose app module, and in the dependency block of the common main source set, let's add the MOKO ViewModel dependency. We will also upgrade the material to Material3 and then reload and sync the Gradle project. We will also streamline our code base a little bit by removing any code that is no longer needed. To address the material theme error, we just need to update the import. Remember to remove all the files in all the targets. I have added the bottom measurement domain object into our project. In the view model, I have implemented UI state we defined previously, along with the UI event that includes the two user interactions. Additionally, we need to implement an onEvent function to manage the event from the UI and a function to update the UI state. The UI state is accessible to the UI via a stateflow. In the update UI state, let's update the body measurements. In the calculator screen, we utilize two key functions. The first function accepts the view model, and the second function takes the state along with the callback for handling events. We invoke the second function from the first one using the extracted state, and it also forwards the UI event back to the view model. This approach serves two main purposes. It separates the view model from the views, adhering to the principle of providing only that is absolutely necessary for the different views. It also simplifies the creation of a preview function, where we only have to supply the UI state and an empty callback. This data class, the UI state, we can customize it to see the different states of UI. To integrate the screen calculator function in our app, start by obtaining the view model. The MOKO library aids in this process with a function called getViewModel, which will require a key and a factory for instantiation. Once you have the view model, you can proceed to call the screen calculator function. Let's focus on the view components for a while. Beginning with the upper part of our interface, this component is quite straightforward. It consists of a simple box that changes color based on a parameter. Additionally, let's also implement a preview function. This function will allow us to confirm that everything is rendering correctly and looks as expected. We can, of course, also change the parameter just to make sure that our function works correctly. Let's also look at the slider view. We have wrapped the slider in a measurement slider view function, taking some configuration inputs and then passing it to the slider. Of course, we also add the preview so we can see that everything looks okay. And then we have the body measurements view. This is the bottom part of the screen. We provide it with the height, both in centimeter and the string, the display, and the same for weight, and we also provide an on-event function. We put these in a column because they are supposed to be under each other. The first row has two texts, one at the left side of the screen and the other one on the right side of the screen. We do these by adding arrangement space between. Under that one we have the measurement slider view that we just looked at, and this is where we actually convert the callback from this slider into a UI event. And of course we do the same for weight. We also have the preview function just to make sure it looks okay. And as we can see, it looks good. If you notice the space at the top, it is because I added some extra padding, about 100 dp, and this is because the overlay that we will have later is centered on top on everything, and it will be 200 dp in size. Let's look at the overview view. We added it as a box with some modifiers. It takes a string, the BMI display. We added size 200. We added background white with a circle shape, and then we added some padding. After that, we changed the background, which would give us this white line around. So we have a center with a different color. Inside this box, we have a column with the content centered. We have two texts on top of each other. The first one is the BMI string, and the second one is the value. And of course, as always, we have the preview function as well. You can see here we added red just so that we can see the white border. If we change it to white, of course, we will not be able to see it. Let's integrate our view. Let's go to the calculator screen, and we can just press the preview so we see what we're working with. We know that we need two big components on top of each other, so let's start with adding a column view. This column should be fill the screen, so we add a modifier to fill max size. And the first component is the top one, so let's add the BMI backdrop view. We want this to have the max width, but only take half of the height. So we do max fill width. and then we set weight to 0.5. We also need to provide the color that this view is going to show. So let's add it from the state. Also for readability, let's put them on separate lines. When it's building now, we will see that it will take the whole screen, and that is because we only have one view in the column so far. So let's add the bottom part as well. Just as the previous one, we want it to fill the max width, but only the bottom half part. So weight 0.5. We then want to provide the data needed for this view to render. All this data is available in the state, so we can just add them one by one. And of course also the on event, we can just redirect it directly to the incoming callback. And now if we look at the preview, we have the top and the bottom. Now we're going to add the overlay. We know that this should be centered on top of this view, so we need to wrap this inside the box. The box should of course take the full screen. And then we center the content to be aligned in the center. And of course also move the column to be inside this box. Now we can add our overview. It only takes the BMI display. And if we look at the preview now, we see it there. The reason there are some strings missing is because we didn't add any default values to the UI state. Let's add these labels. So we have a utils folder with a float extension. The first function we added is to round up to the nearest integer. That's for the height. The second one is to round up to nearest half. That is for the weight. We also have the formatted string to make sure we only have 2 decimals for the BMI. And finally, we have a function to convert to the color needed for the top view. There's one more extension function that I want to create. It's in the domain, and it is how to calculate the actual BMI. It's the weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters, so I also added a conversion ratio. Now let's tie it all together back to the calculated view model. We already have the update UI state method, so let's start updating the different UI. We start by calculating the BMI with the function we just added. And of course the state should stay up with the bracket. Now let's just add all the different parameters needed for the complete UI state. Let's also add an init block just to make sure that we instantiate everything with the right values. For that, we can just call our update UI state with the default bottom measurement, which we can find in our UI state. And that should be it. Let's run it and see. Let's start with the compose app for desktop and see how it looks. Sliders works, the BMI works, and we get the updated color as well. Let's go and check how it looks on iOS. And it looks like it's working perfectly on iOS as well. And then let's check Android just to make sure that all three are working. And yes, it seems to be working well there as well. Thank you for watching. I hope this video gave you an insight on building a KMP app. It's not that different from building a regular native Android application. If you have enjoyed this video and learned something, please hit the like, share with your friends, and subscribe for more tutorials and videos like this. Oh, and don't hesitate to drop your questions or suggestions in the comment below. I am Per-Erik, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy coding!